Dear students, welcome to the property law course, and my name is Pawan Dutt. I'll be dealing with this particular course, so that is HOE 6011. And well, it's a strange feeling because I remember last year when I was teaching this course in spring, everything seemed quite okay. And of course, came to March 2020, and then we had this pandemic, or something that people didn't really understand. And so all the classrooms were shut, and we tried to move online. And we were hoping that everything would get sorted out by April or May. Yeah, well, went into the autumn term, and now we are in the spring term here. So things are the way they are. Some places are better, some places are getting worse. So, well, it's safe to assume that we will have this particular course online. So, everything will be through Moodle, and I will be recording my video lectures and putting them up on YouTube and putting the links in Moodle so that you can check them as well. The reason why I prefer using YouTube is because then you can get high definition quality. That's very important in, makes one look nice in a way. And of course, there is also a lot of information that is already there in the Moodle course page. So we'll go through all of these things and look at some of the issues at hand. So I see that there are quite a few students already registered over here, about 12. Well, it's just the starting, so it's okay. I'm sure more will find their way soon. And well, if you're already here, then I'm presuming that you must have checked out the Moodle course page also. And well, the most important, of course, is the extended syllabus that I would like you to pay attention to. It comprises of various elements regarding this course, and the aims and the learning outcomes and things like that, which can all be found over here. Now we'll be looking at property law in an in-depth manner. Because so many of you are from outside Estonia, it doesn't make sense to teach you Estonian property law. Instead, you look at very general principles, and these are things that you will find all across the world, maybe with some different permutations or differences in some smaller details. But otherwise, more or less, whatever we discuss will be in a general comparative sense. And I'll be looking at not only general norms, but also specifically I'll be looking at, for example, the Estonian property law. Then there is the French law on properties, and then there is the English law on properties. Now, why would I want to do such a thing? Well, of course, English law has its quirks and some things, well, we all know by now that the English think differently. Yeah, and although they have left the European Union after Brexit, well, many of their laws are still compliant so far. Then also because it's an older law regime, it's very interesting to see how they have considered certain property issues like the right to light, various concepts that they have about trespassing and things like that. So we'll study some of these issues. Then there is a French code. Well, it's from the Napoleonic times, and it's a very interesting code because it sort of goes into real detail. If you have a tree, apple tree, who owns the apples, what happens if the apple falls on the neighbor's property, and things like that. Now, some of these may sound stupid, right? I mean, but these are examples. So the trick here is not to think about property law in the context of apples and, I don't know, bananas, but more in the context of how you could look at these issues from a different perspective sometimes. It's just an illustrative example after all. So if you're looking at apples, maybe you're looking at the shares of the Apple company, or Microsoft. Yeah, so if you transpose these ideas into other areas or other fields, then you begin to realize that an example can serve very well. And so we look at these issues. So for example, when French law says that, if you have a dog and she lays, she gives birth to a litter and you have now 7 puppies, well, that's not such a bad example, because of course you own the dog and now you also own the puppies. But if you were to look at this, for example, by looking at shares, all right, so you own shares in a company. Let's say your parents owned shares in Nokia, and now these shares were taken over, rather the company was taken over by Microsoft. So now you have a new shareholders agreement, and you have this swap arrangement whereby maybe 5 Nokia shares are equal to 1 Microsoft share. Yeah, so in that situation, what you're looking at over here is you owned, or rather your parents owned a Nokia share, or 5 Nokia shares, and now they own a Microsoft share. So now if you were to look at this from the viewpoint of the example of the dog, well, you can see already over here how a particular unit of a share can be divided into 5 or 1/5. And so based on that, again, the general principles of property law would still apply. So we'll look at this in more detail. Yeah, it's just the introductory lecture today. I don't want to scare you all off. I understand it's not a compulsory course, so a lot of you just come here because you like to know about property law, and maybe you like me. Yeah, so of course shouldn't scare you away, not on the first day at least. 3 credits, and all the information that you need is already here. Of course, what do you need to study? Well, everything will be from Moodle, so it's all there. But if you want to study something more, there is a book in the library that you can refer to. In the past, I've had some visitors from the United States, from Germany, and they have given guest lectures. I don't think that's going to happen this term. But anyways, I will not make their previous PowerPoint presentations available in Moodle, because that would only cause confusion, because some German concepts, for example, can be very different from English law concepts, or vice versa. So we'll just keep it simple in that sense. All right. End of this course, just like with all my courses, you do not become an expert lawyer or something, right? You're still young for that. This is a bachelor level course, and I'm just laying foundational elements in front of you, and so that will help you later on in your career. Of course, when you do masters, or you do whatever else, or you work in a law firm or wherever, then of course you will need to gain more experience and read more things. This is just a very simple, basic, elementary course. Of course, if you look at Moodle, it doesn't seem so basic or simple, but yeah, it is. from a lawyer's perspective, it's quite basic. So then what will we have over here? Assessment. Well, there will be, of course, the main exam, written exam. It'll be probably online. Don't worry about it. I'll inform you as the lectures progress or proceed. And if you look in the Moodle notes carefully, you will see that some parts are mentioned or marked as not for the exam. Well, obviously this will now be an open book exam because it's online. And so, well, you have to read the material and know what to find where. And of course, the exam questions will not be straightforward anymore. You will have something like some case or something, or some example, and then you have to try to figure out a solution for it. So I'll give you all the details as we proceed. And besides the exam, which will be for 60 marks, there will be 5 essay style homework questions. Yeah, so that's about 8 marks each. So that's 40 marks in all. And these homework assignments will be mentioned when we come up to them. And of course, try to keep them interesting and on the topic. So I'll give you details about them whenever they are up, and I'll upload them and I'll inform you, and you'll of course have 30 days or more to write them. So you'll have plenty of time to do them. And as you know, those of you who have studied in my previous courses, well, everything is on Moodle. The system is transparent, no special rules for anybody unless you have a medical certificate. And well, you have a deadline, you upload the homework assignment within the deadline, and everybody lives happily ever after. But if you have this need for speed and this thrill that you get by submitting, 0.0 seconds or 0.01 seconds before the deadline, well, don't do that. All right, you have 30 days to do a homework, and I'm sure you can upload it in 25 days or whatever. If you keep it to the last moment, I'm sure something will go wrong. All right, it's Murphy's law. Your cat will eat the mouse of your laptop or your computer, or the internet connection will go down, and this always causes problems. I don't know why, but there's always that one joker who thinks that time doesn't apply to him or her. Well, I'm sorry. Yeah, time applies to everybody. So just try to be on time. It's not a strict criteria about doing a homework in 2 days or something. You have 30 days to do something. Trust me, if you can't do it in 30 days, you'll never do it. All right. So it's important as a lawyer to respect guidelines and time limits, because in a court of law you can't tell the judge that you were late in submitting something um, because your porridge fell over your laptop. That doesn't work anymore. All right. So the evaluation criteria are here as well. The homework assignments will be about different topics, and I'll talk about them as we go. And the final grade, as you can see, 60 plus 40 is equal to 100. And then it's graded 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and of course 0 also. In my courses, the way they are designed, of course, everybody passes. And now if it's online, well, it gets even more easier. But of course, you still have to read the notes and still have to understand what the topic is and what the issues are. But trust me, not everybody gets a 5, because you have to work hard for that. Quite a lot of people get 3s and 4s, which is also very good or good. Um, well, yeah, some people do fail, but trust me, if you fail in my course, it's not because of me. It's purely because of you. All right, it's yourself. The blame lies at your doorstep. The way my courses are, you have to be really special to fail in them. All right, but it's easy to fail. Because let's say you don't do the homework assignments because you're too good for homework. Well, that's 40 marks gone straight away. Yeah. So now you just have an exam, written exam, 60 marks, and you need to get 51 out of 60 just to pass. So of course that's how the problems start. But if you stick to the deadlines, you and I will do quite well. Okay. So detailed schedule and topics are also there, of course. One more note, well, plagiarism, it's getting more of an issue with online stuff. Yeah, but there are also people who copy homework assignments and things, which is silly, because you can just read the homework assignment topics and do the homework yourself. You don't really need to copy from your friends. But if people copy, and they copy in such a blatant way that they get caught, then yeah, it's a big problem. All right. Of course, remember, in law there are certain rules that I always talk about, especially in the first year. I may have spoken about this with some of you who remember it still. Well, rule number 1, learn to bend the law without breaking the law. Right. So you bend it without breaking it. Rule number 1. Rule number 2, don't get caught. And rule number 3, well, if somebody goes to prison, make sure it's the client and not you. All right. So we'll talk about all of this over here as well. And it's very interesting, because recently, I don't know if you have read in the news, but there were some 15, 20 young Estonians and Georgians in Estonia who were caught with selling drugs and stuff. Yeah, it just came in the news yesterday. It's been all over. And then, of course, it's very interesting, because one of the people who got in trouble is a lawyer. Yeah. 2 of the criminals were already in prison, and then their lawyer went and tried to pass messages from those people who are inside prison to those people who are outside prison, the gang members, to tell them what to do with the drugs and stuff. Don't do that. All right. Of course, we'll talk about some property issues. Well, drugs are property as well, movable property. But of course, how do you deal with property? And there are certain rules in place. So we'll talk about all of these things. What happens if you find certain types of property? Who owns that property? You're going in a bus or I don't know somewhere, and then you find a bag, and you open the bag and you find 10 kilos of cocaine. Well, what do you do? There's one right answer and many wrong answers. Well, the right answer would be it's property. Of course, it's not finders keepers because it's illegal, and so it's either treasure or it's mislaid property or it's lost property. So we look at all of these concepts, and based on these concepts, you can make a decision what to do with that 10-kilo bag of cocaine that you find in the bus, for example. All right, so we look at some of these issues. But again, already you are, I think, now in the second year. Yeah. So you need to start getting more lawyerly, yeah, more serious about your studies and also about the subjects at hand. So some of these topics or subjects can seem quite simplistic, but they are very foundational in a way still. Property law would still be important for you to understand the difference between different types of property. Then, of course, the next level would be intellectual property law, for example, which would now go to the situation where you have property, but it's not your usual property. It's not like a pen or a car or a house. It's intangible. So we look at some of these issues as well, and then you go to the next level, which would be data, and then what is the value of data in life and in society, and what sort of property would that come under. So a lot of things that you have, everything that you own, it's your property. So we look at some of these issues. So there'll be these general definitions and basic concepts related to ownership and types of property, etc. And then, as you can imagine, this will take a bit of time because we need to understand definitions in a really good way. We cannot skimp this part or jump over, because definitions are very crucial. As a lawyer, the only way you know that something fits into this frame is if it's in that legal definition. So it's very important. Then we look at concepts and legal rules related to transfer of property rights. Again, a very deep subject. It's not like anything goes. You can't just do whatever you want to do. Of course, you're presuming that you are an owner, but you're not always the owner of a property. You could be a licensee, you could be an authorized user. So we look at all of these issues, and of course, there are different concepts and legal rules. This particular part of the course can be very confusing. I'll try to give examples and try to explain things, but yeah, it is a very confusing part of the course, because property law has a lot of important elements that need to be taken into account. Just because you own something, you can't just give it to whoever or deal with it in whatever way. And of course, over here comes a very important element, which is what happens after you die. How do you deal with such properties? What are your rights after your death? Then there are some very strange areas which will we be talking about as well, which sort of come up over here, because maybe if I have a pen and I die, so who gets my pen? Well, my wife, yeah, my children. So there are very important elements laid down over here, and these deal with who gets what. But of course, this is not straightforward, right? Because let's say daddy has cancer, and doctor says, well, if you want to go for treatment, chemotherapy or whatever, then it's best to get some sperm deposit somewhere in a cold storage, because chemotherapy can affect your sperm production later on. So if a daddy is 35 years old, then maybe you still want to have children later on. So of course, now well, this is property. It belongs to the man. It's in the in a cold storage unit somewhere in a medical laboratory. And now let's say daddy dies. So who does the sperm belong to? Now the sperm is not the same as a pen, right? Yeah. um, and of course, you can have complications sometimes, because There are some cases, I'll talk about them as well. A man died, and the sperms went to his wife, and the wife doesn't want to use them. But now the man's parents are saying, what the hell, we want grandchildren. So if it's not suitable to the widow, the wife of the late husband, then in that case, she should give their son's sperms to them, so that they can get some other woman pregnant and get a grandchild through that person. Now there are these are very sophisticated issues, not straightforward and simple. We'll talk about these. Biotechnology has, of course, messed up property law, completely. So many of these concepts and legal rules, which have worked for hundreds of years, they work for something like a pen, but not for biotechnology, for example. Then there are legal definitions and issues related with the most conventional forms of property transfer: sale, mortgage, lease, exchange, gift. And of course, wills as well. So we'll be looking at some of these issues in detail. And then, of course, definition of each topic, subtopic, do's and don'ts, rights and obligations, liabilities and duties. All of these come up over here. Then we look at the rights in the context of neighbors, because we live around neighbors, and so there are servitudes, there's nuisance, and water rights, all sorts of things. We'll talk about these over here. All right, and that should more or less take care of things. So of course, all my lecture notes will be here as well. Now there will be some homeworks that are going to be put up, and well, they're not visible right now, but they will be visible soon. So don't worry about it. And most of them are quite straightforward and simple, but there is this one particular homework that I'm quite proud of. It's regarding drafting a will. So one of the end products of this course will be that you will be trained in drafting a legal will. All right. Well, unfortunately, so many of you are from so many different countries, so we can't have a will under Finnish law or Estonian law or Turkish law or Georgian law or Russian law. That doesn't make sense, because I would have no clue what the hell are you doing. So instead, there are these 6 documents that I have uploaded, and they deal with how wills are made, what are the do's or don'ts, what are the legal provisions in the United Kingdom. More specifically in England, because they have this crazy thing with Scotland and Wales. There are some on Northern Ireland, there are some distinctions. So basically, you're going to be treated like a lawyer. And so you are a lawyer, and you have to draft a will, and you're given the background documentation, 6 documents to figure out how the law is. And then based on that, you have to now make a will for your imaginary client. All right. And well, I did this for the first time last term, and I was a bit hesitant about this, because I remember from my time, when I was studying law, in 1996, 1997, quite a long time ago. I passed out in 1998. I'm 45, soon to be 46. So, well, of course, at that time, drafting wills was horrible. It didn't make any sense. It wasn't fun. But I was quite surprised with the results in the previous term. Many of the students really seemed to enjoy doing this, or at least I enjoyed reading their work or works, and so I hope to have a repeat of it this time as well. And so if you're someday, if your parents ask you or family members ask you, all right, you went to Talon Law School, what the hell did you learn there? Then you can say that you learned how to draft a will under English law. How handy will that be? I don't know. With Brexit, you can't even go to stay permanently in London anymore, unless you have a living permit. But I'm sure it'll be helpful for you. All right, so we have all of this stuff over here. And as I said in the previously, I mentioned a bit about foreign lecturers. Each of them gave us some interesting tidbits. There was this American professor who came, who spoke about He spoke about fracking and oil exploration from a very US perspective. It was very interesting. Then there was another American lawyer married to a Finnish woman and living in Alon. Yeah, so they are like semi-Finnish, semi-Swedish, and he was a United Nations expert on property law matters in refugee stressed areas. Libya, Iraq, places like that. So again, very interesting perspectives. Then there were some trips we had done to Israel and Palestine. Again, very interesting issues that came up, law, politics, property law, and things like that. But again, well, as I said, again, we also had some 3 or 4 German guest lecturers. But yeah, we keep it simple this time. Well, those of you who are still not sure about property law and its consequences, well, the easiest example would be Stockman. Yeah, remember Stockman? Yeah, it's still there, of course, in Helsinki and in Tallinn, and they have had some financial issues, if you may recollect. But I mean, it's a big departmental store. They got all the top brands. They have all the stuff going for them. But yeah, online sales are going higher. People are not buying so much, in a store. And then of course with the pandemic, what's the point of getting dressed up if there's nowhere to go? So it has had an effect on a lot of stores and departmental stores. And Stockman is one of the last of the kind. Yeah, you have Stockman, you have Virukeskus. I mean, they don't even make sense anymore. Why do you have them? Because there are so many new alternatives with the digital purchasing and things like that. But of course, that's not our area of interest. Our area of interest is that what the company that owns Stockman has done is they have decided to sell Stockman, the house, the building, the properties, and then they are getting a long-term lease on it. So from owners they have become lessees, yeah, or tenants in a way. And then of course then they are giving out this to others, so sub-tenancy rights are created, and then sub-rentals happen. And so all of these are very interesting areas from a legal perspective, because you can now see, I mean, as a consumer, ordinary person, you go to Helsinki, you go to Tallinn, it's still Stockman, it's still the same. The employees are the same, the brands are the same. Maybe they have different fashion styles and things, but internally from a legal perspective, you can already see how interesting this situation is. And it's not just in the context of real estate. You can also see this, for example, with your iPhone or your new car. So let's say you want to buy a Tesla car, and you don't have 45,000 or 75,000 euros in your pocket. Well, you can go for a leasing, right? I mean, you have this 5-year agreement with a bank, or a leasing company, a non-banking financial corporation. And well, you get the car, you get the keys, you pay every month for 5 years certain sums of money. You pay upfront some things, and then you have to pay a sizable chunk in the end. But what that means is, because of easy credit, you are able to drive around in a Tesla. Otherwise, you would still be stuck in your, I don't know, grandfather's Zigoli or something, or an old Fiat or something. But no, I mean, so this is an indication of how sophistication in the property law system enables you to enjoy the fruits of consumerism. So I mean, you could buy a house for 2.5 million euros, or you could get a 30-year loan for I don't know, 2% interest, and that's ridiculous, right? I mean, I have a house and I pay a very small sum of money, and of course I could have bought the house straight away. But why do that? I mean, if you're getting 2% interest rate, that's next to nothing. I mean, considering inflation and things like that. So we look at some of these areas and issues, of course, from a legal perspective. All right, this is not a course or a class where you get investment tips or ideas. No, you look at it from a legal perspective. There is a mortgagor, there's a mortgagee, the bank is a mortgagee, and you want a loan, fine. That's the bank's job. They give you loans, and then of course, well, the problem here is what happens if you cannot pay back the loan. Then then life is horrible because it's a contract, it's an obligation, you have to fulfill it. You could of course reschedule your mortgage terms and conditions. So we look at all of these things, and again legally, you have to be very clear what is a mortgage, what is a sale. And very often people confuse terms, but you can't confuse them, not in law. I mean, this is a ballpoint pen, all right? That's it. This is not an ink pen. This is not a crayon. This is not a coloring pencil. This is a pen. It's a ballpoint pen, all right? Maybe a bit different from this, because this also has a ballpoint mechanism, but in a different way. But you see, some of these are quite similar, and so they have to fit in a particular legal definition. And this can have a lot of implications from the taxation point of view. So it's very important to keep in mind as young budding lawyers that you do not study law only in one context. All right, it's not always just about a simple thing. Law comprises of a lot of very confusing areas which are brought in together seamlessly. So for example, when you study law, it's LLB. LLB is Legum Bacheloros in Latin. Why? Because you're not becoming a bachelor of one law, but you're becoming a bachelor of several laws. And so when you look at a situation, you don't only have to look at it from a property law perspective, but also from the taxation point of view. And then that really makes things very complicated. So for example, if you look at all the problems that Google is facing, digital media, online, your social media platforms, well, of course, there is the data that is collected and used, but that's only the first part. All right, once the governments of respective countries or member states or blocks or regions start imposing crackdowns on social media, then the next thing would be the taxation aspect. And that's also very important in whatever restructuring you do in a property deal, for example. So maybe if you go to buy something, you have to pay a certain amount of tax, unless it's under the law it's provided that your first property, your first flat or your first house, you don't have to pay a tax when you sell it, or whatever. So you have these complications. Sometimes you have capital gains tax, which can be very complicated in many countries. Let's say you buy a house, your grandparents bought a house in Helsinki, for the equivalent of 50,000 euros. That time you had Finnish marks or whatever, all right? And this was, let's say, 20 years ago. So it was 50,000 euros or equivalent in that time's currency in 20 years ago. And today that house is worth 500,000 euros. So wow, right? I mean, that's really good. So you sell it and you have to pay a certain tax on whatever you have got for it. I mean, depending on the legal regime. Remember, if it's your first house, second house, how long you have had it for, etc., can play a role. But in some countries, besides the normal tax that you have to pay for, when you sell a house and you make a profit, there's also a tax on capital gains. So they also calculate that this house original price was 50,000 euros. Then you got it, in a will, so it's free for you. And now you want to sell it for 500,000 euros. So now you have to calculate, and the government wants a share of that capital gains tax as well. I mean, you have made some capital gains over here. Because you got something for 50,000, you're selling it for 500,000. That's a 450,000 euro profit, right? So of course, why would this be relevant for you if it doesn't apply in, for example, Estonia? Well, this is a very general course. So maybe you learn about this, and now you know what to look out for when you are in a foreign country. All right. So we look at a lot of these issues under property law, and of course, the lectures are just in addition to the material in Moodle. So the idea here is you come for the lecture. I mean, in your bedroom, in your pajamas, you watch the video lecture. you read the associated notes for that day, and that's it, more or less. You're on track. So somehow we'll do it this way, and hopefully 11-12 weeks will pass easily. Of course, if you have some questions, there are certain ways to deal with that. One would be, there is you can send me an email or a Moodle message, and I can reply back to you. Another way is there's a course participants forum. So you can freely talk about things, not freely in that sense, but you can just raise issues and we can discuss them over there. So we try to make the best of it, online, digital. I don't know how long this will last. Maybe a year, maybe 10 years, maybe forever. Yeah. But well, until we can meet in the classroom, we try to do things this way. It's not perfect. I'm not very happy about it either, because I'm more of a people person. I like to be in a classroom. I like to watch your eyes go like this when I give you my crazy examples. But well, yeah, we try to do what we have to do. Okay, so thank you for your time, and this was just the introductory lecture, of course, and we'll have regular lectures. So I mean, I'll try to put up video lectures online before time, and then at the appointed time you can view the lecture on the video, and then of course read the notes that are there for that day. So until next time, thank you for dropping by, and make sure you register in OIS, and if any of your friends are confused, please inform them where to find this Moodle course. All right, so thank you and see you next time. Goodbye.